The Blokebusters podcast is proud to be a member of the Pod Bros Network. You can find us, as well as other fantastic podcasts, such as Pencil and Ink Review, Another Damn Trivia Show, and Language of Bromance at podbros.com, as well as on most other fine podcasting services. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to share and enjoy the Blokebusters podcast.
Welcome to episode 20 of Film for Thought, our little experiment in...
Yes. Thank you. I couldn't hold on there.
I was wondering how long you were going to go.
And thank you for testing it.
I'm really glad we got this far, actually. It's kind of nice.
It's a fun little side project.
Yeah. So, before we start this, obviously, do follow us on or through any of the following. Twitter at Blokebusters, Facebook.com, Blokebusters, email us at blokebusterpodcast@gmail.com. We have a website, blokebusters.webs.com. We have an Instagram account, and do rate, review, subscribe, tell everyone, whatever. If you can get our name out there in any format, we would be much appreciated.
Next time I'm putting 20 seconds on the clock and seeing if you can do it. I think you can. I believe in you.
I think I just did it, actually.
Okay. It felt pretty tight.
All right. So, what is this one about? Well,
that is a great question. I would love to hear the answer.
Yes. Apparently, despite having explained it twice to Brian, he still doesn't actually know what this is. So, the idea I came up with here is actually to explain an idea that Brian came up with.
So, yes, I don't understand my own idea.
Yeah. So, in the future, we are planning on doing what Brian is tentatively calling, and I think we'll probably stick, Franch-Fried, which is where we review the latest installment of a franchise that we feel has gone on for
far too long. That latest installment having maybe been released currently, or the latest installment could have been released 20 years ago. Whatever, it's the most recent installment.
There's the latest one available to us. Not one that's in the cinema, though, I think.
I think we're going to avoid that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that would fall under our regular theatrical release,
so I don't
reviews.
think we'll do Transformers to begin with, at least. We might end up...
No.
Towards the end, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So what I thought we would do is spend this episode actually explaining what our own thoughts are on when a franchise goes too far. Like what are
and this can serve as a reference point for when we do these. Go back to this episode.
Yes. So what is the criteria we're looking at? What sort of thing are we anticipating? And then, obviously, you guys, after listening to this, can suggest things for us to do. So I do feel like the first one we should do is the one you were throwing around when we were talking about this before, which is the last Police Academy.
Yes.
I think it's the one we're going to go with. And also, it doesn't matter what we've seen beforehand. It doesn't matter if we've seen all of the films or if we have actually seen none of the films. We are just going to see the last one and go with that.
We're not going to brush up. I did throw out the idea, if you have seen any in the franchise, you're allowed to brush up on those films if you so choose.
Yes.
But you cannot see any more.
Yes.
If you haven't seen them by that time.
So, what is the last Police Academy?
Police Academy 6, City Under Siege. That was 1989.
1989. All right. So, yes, look forward to that when we end up doing that.
I am not already looking forward to that.
I'm not even going to look at what you're
I think this is for the boys in soiled restroom, but I don't know. We'll tackle it, I guess.
So, as
boys and girls, sorry.
Boys and girls.
Yes.
So, I think what we should start off with is the only criteria that we have specified ahead of this episode is that a franchise must consist of 4 or more films.
Anything less is a trilogy or a two-parter or whatever you have.
Or a failed franchise or something like that. Now, the only thing I would say that kind of breaks that is the Matrix, because they also came out with the Animatrix and then did a video game.
Did that get a
well.
theatrical release though?
I don't know if they gave
I don't believe
a
it did.
theatrical release. They definitely screened it at places. Yeah. But I don't know if it was theatrical. So yes, those films wouldn't count. However, they have since kind of morphed into a franchise by itself. But it has to be theatrically released films. For instance, Beverly Hills Cop wouldn't count because it only reached a trilogy, I believe.
Yes.
So, however, Lethal Weapon would, because they reached 4.
I think it needs to be 4 films that got a theatrical release. Yeah. So none of this American Pie presents bullshit.
I don't know,
because those are direct to video on demand crap and.
Yeah, so we would have... I mean, I do think they did release more than 3 theatrically, but we would only watch the last theatrically released one. So...
yeah.
Alright, so... Well, let's get into this then. So, what actually made you think of this idea first?
Well, I was returning from vacation. I was sleep deprived and tired from a over 11-hour drive, and just done listening with podcasts because I had listened to all that I could stand, and I was just let the brain wander for a while. And I was just thinking, okay, what else could we do on the podcast? And I thought of the game, which we might tell you about at some point, that I came up with, and then I thought, well, that I really, really enjoy what Soiled Restroom does, and I'm like, well, you know what? All the good ideas are taken. Let's just steal a good idea, sort of, and make it our own.
Yes. And so, in case you don't know, Soiled Restroom Cinema, they basically just rip into bad films. So do go check them out.
Similar to How Did This Get Made with Paul Scheer, similar style there. Which it's always fantastic talking about the shitty ones. So
which actually explained a couple of our own reviews as well. If you go back into our catalog,
So I got thinking, what is it I don't like about films, or what irks me? And I'm sure I've gone into this in the podcast before, but it's the lack of ideas, the remakes, the reboots, the unoriginal ideas that studios just put out to just make their money back or make a little bit of profit,
Which I'll actually say, good news from Pixar, with the exception of the films that they have already announced, no more sequels.
Oh, that's fantastic. So that was kind of what the thought that dawned on me is like, oh my god, they just... Every year, it's just a new Paranormal Activity, or every 6 months, it seems like. And it's going to turn that way with The Purge, apparently. They're going to turn one of those out every 10 or 11 months. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm kind of sick of seeing these films just over and over and over again. So we need to kill some franchises. So that's where I'm like, okay, well, I got to come up, my brain, I got to come up with a fun little title for it. So Franch-Fried, a franchise that has been fried, in our opinions. Just don't make them anymore, please. We have no weight with the studio system. Our opinion will not be listened to, but we will still, nonetheless, let it be heard.
Yes.
So that's kind of the origin of the idea.
Yeah, we're the guy in Hyde Park with a bullhorn just yelling out.
Yes. Essentially, yes. We will yell out. If you want to listen, that is great. But we're going to do it anyway.
Alright, so, as we said, it has to be more than 3 films theatrical film to be considered a franchise. So, what do you think is the point when a franchise has gone on too long? Is it one of those things where...
I think it's probably a lot of criteria. One... when there's no original cast left, or maybe one person, but that was like an extra in the first film, or scientist number 1, is now the lead of film 5.
So again, to bring up American Pie, Eugene Levy.
Yes, exactly. That happened quickly with Mannequin 2. None of the original cast. Yes, there was a Mannequin 2. Did you not know that?
I did not.
That what made me think is how did this get made? That's the next one they're doing. That's why I know that. But no Andrew McCarthy, no Kim Cattrall. Yeah, it's just like the fashion designer. I think that's the only returning character. Weekend at Bernie's 2 at least had the two leads and Bernie again. But yeah, so that's a big clue that it's gone on too long when you can't get any of the original cast to be in the movie.
Yeah.
When they have run out of ideas or they are repeating the plot, that they've done prior.
Now, the question there is, is it allowed to be repeated if it's them kind of spoofing themselves and having a laugh at themselves, or do you mean repeated as in kind of like Independence Day 2 that we just reviewed, where it's the exact same plot beats and they've just done something slightly
I think it has to be really, really, exactly close, or very, very, very close to the exact same thing. So what I'm thinking of is, Die Hard would be an exception, because even though it's the same scenario, generic scenario, okay, terrorist, we gotta save the day.
Yes, McClane jumps in.
Yeah, so it's not exactly okay, Lex Luthor wants to acquire some land again. Okay, so that would be an exact same plot, where...
Well...
which Superman Returns is essentially, is what they... that's what Lex always wants to do.
I was going to say, when it comes to franchises as well, the Superman one seems to have jumped all over the place, because you had the original Superman... when I say the original, I mean, thinking back on it...
Not the George Reeves, Christopher.
Yes, the Christopher Reeve
because that Superman, was just the TV,
and then Long Break, and then Returns, and then they're doing the new Superman. So, do you consider Superman the character to be the franchise, or do you consider each iteration a different attempt?
I think that needs to be evaluated on a situation by situation basis.
Right, because I personally feel that once you change, unless they flat out say this is the exact same character, so it doesn't matter who's playing it. Once they've changed actor for the lead, or the same name lead role, then you're into a different thing entirely. Like the remake of Evil Dead is supposedly both a remake and a reboot in one. I'm not sure I fully get that, but anyway.
But would you consider Bond then to be a franchise? Because I would, even though it's not the same.
I would consider Bond to be
the same different actors, different filmmakers, different writers.
Yeah, I would definitely consider that to be a franchise, because when you say Bond, the Bond is the character, and everyone has a favorite Bond. So they're not seen as a new person becoming Bond. They're seen as a new person playing the same character. So,
okay.
With the possible exception of the
I think we do need to be careful with reboots and reimaginings.
Yeah, because you could argue that the Daniel Craig Bonds are a reboot, and all of the previous ones are its own thing, and they're all Bond. So
with the new Nightmare on Elm Street, I don't think that I think the original is a franchise, but the Jackie Earl Haley, did I get that name right? I think that would not be part of that franchise, because that was an attempt to reboot.
Yeah, that was a full reboot. So
that is not in whatever the most recent Nightmare on Elm Street. You probably
the most recent Nightmare on Elm Street was New Nightmare.
So that would be if we decide to do that one. But
which I actually
you think? Yes, I said you've been on record that you like.
Yeah, I would say that the original Nightmare on Elm Street run just did it well.
And there's no definition that says this has to be a bad film.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It's just the last in the franchise. Well, maybe you're thinking, well, it's Franch-Fried. It's just one of us that has to think it's gone on too long.
That can be the thing. I personally think that, and not having been into the original Friday the 13th, I personally think there are probably too many of those.
Yeah.
So, and then do we count Freddy versus Jason as the latest Friday the 13th? Because I know they rebooted it, but that doesn't count because that's a reboot. So Freddy versus Jason would be the latest.
It's out. I'm making it. It's out. Yeah, it's out.
So okay. Apparently we're not doing that one.
I don't know. If it gets confusing, it's out.
The one thing you could say is Freddy vs. Jason is a joint franchise attempt. So if we just ignore that, then I believe Friday the 13th X or whatever it is.
Jason
X.
Jason X. Yep.
Which I would be all for doing, actually.
Oh boy, yeah. Would Lost? I mean, or Jurassic World be? That is still the same world. It's still the same universe, and still...
Technically, yes. The only issue is they have gone on record as saying that Jurassic World is a direct sequel to Jurassic Park.
Okay,
so technically it's a rebooted...
They've copied and pasted... cut and cut. Whatever. So cut out that middle section and just... and they taped themselves on.
Yeah, you
Twice is what I was looking for.
I think they could argue that 2 and 3 are kind of alternate...
alternate universes, alternate timeline.
Like they may have happened, but didn't actually have any effect on the world. And Jurassic World is seen as the true sequel. So
Ghostbusters. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
we will definitely have to wait and see. And even
then, I know it's new, but I'm just using it as an example.
Well, that would only be 3.
That is only 3. Yeah, you're right.
Unless you count...
Are we counting the Sunday morning or the Saturday morning cartoon?
Well, no, but they did state that they had an idea for Ghostbusters 3, and the most recent video game that came out, not including the one for the new film, is actually what their idea for the third film would be. So you're playing the third film. So if this new Ghostbusters is a continuation, which... As far as I know, it seems to be that it's a different chapter of Ghostbusters. They've styled themselves on the original. Then that would count. But again, that's a new theatrical release, and therefore it wouldn't.
Like I said, just using it as a kind of parameter here.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that counts because people have gone on record. The people that made these things have gone on record as saying that this counts in the canon. So, this is them. So, and again, this is something that we can easily hash out over time.
So, I think the new Star Treks are out because that's just, it's not a continuation of those original films.
It is not. However, we could do the last Star Trek.
Yeah, because they're, what they did 5, was it?
I think
4?
I think it was 5.
Yeah, I think it was 5. Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's a fair number of those, and...
Which I have only seen Wrath of Khan of those.
I still have not seen any of them.
Wow.
Yeah, I did do a film spotlight with someone who has said to me, you need to see that. So, I would enjoy that.
Especially just to draw parallels with Into Darkness. I think it's definitely worth seeing it. Wrath of Khan.
Yeah,
that was a good one. So I picked the best one. I watched it supposedly.
Well, and that would be the thing. If 5 is the one we go with, then that is the odd numbered one, which, as
the rule
Tim
goes,
Besley says, is crap.
Odd numbers are crap.
I mean, obviously, as you've heard, the actual definition of a franchise seems to be up in the air, and then the definition of when it goes too far. For instance, Harry Potter. Okay. I personally think that they could have combined the 7th and 8th film into one just slightly longer film, cut out a couple of things, and then it would have been just fine. And I think that as a franchise worked quite well because it was following every book, and whatever you have to say about the film versus the book, they're its own thing. And I thought that franchise worked very well. So, obviously, you can have franchises that are just fine, and then you can have other ones which do just seem to go on way too long. And I genuinely don't know, and maybe we'll discover from watching some of these films, what the tipping point is. Where do you
I think
have
it'll
to hit?
be a part of the experience in reviewing these is to figure out why they have gone on, other than the obvious answer of money.
I mean that can be another thing as well. I believe a lot of people will say Alien, and also going into that, we run into Prometheus. Does that count? Because it is not called Alien, but it's a continuation of the world. So that one would be Alien Resurrection? Was that the 4th one?
That was I thought it was the third.
Well, Alien Resurrection could be the third one. There is a fourth one, right?
No, I thought there was just 3.
I don't know.
Sorry, alien people out there. No, you're right. That's the fourth, Alien Resurrection. Alien 3 was just Alien 3.
There we go. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we could always cover that one if some people get a hold of us and say they think that went on too long.
So I don't know. Yes, I would.
I wonder if we're going to get a lot of horror films.
Well, I think we are, just because they do a ton of horror films.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, just even though it is the same world as, Prometheus is a prequel, even though it came out chronologically after these others.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they're resetting the table with Prometheus.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I saw that film, is that they were trying to go, okay, we can come back to this now.
Yeah. And then with the Alien Covenant coming out, which I'm super excited for. Fassbender is all that I need there. So I don't know if that one would quite qualify. Then, much in the same vein, even though we've already reviewed the film, but for argument's sake, Creed, even though it is not Rocky in the title, most people view that as a film in the Rocky franchise. Yeah,
you can. And you still have Sylvester Stallone as Rocky Balboa.
Exactly.
So, that one technically would count. So, we could consider
that we've already done our first episode.
We've already done the first episode. I love it when we realise these things after we're recording.
Yes. All right, well, it'll be episode 2 next time.
There we go. So, I think it's going to be fun to do, and I really hope it's going to be fun to listen to.
One, I think, which maybe we've already done a couple episodes, Terminator.
Yeah, actually. I think that could be considered the unofficial pilot, as it were, then, because...
that film definitely killed the franchise for me.
Yeah.
Speaking of Genesis, of course, if you're not familiar.
Yeah, Salvation was really borderline as well, and then, Genesis just... Yeah, do you need me to pull out my time?
No, please, no wibbly wobbly timely wimey stuff, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered the sort of thing we're kind of looking for, and yet we really do want you guys to get a hold of us and tell us which films you feel we should cover. I really, really do want to do Police Academy 6 first.
I think that would be fun. So just real quick hatchlight of the guidelines we are sure of right now.
Yeah.
Must be 4 theatrical releases.
Yeah, right? Theatrical release, and I don't think we should specify which country. So I do think that obviously you can have English films that maybe went on but didn't all get released in America. I think it just, as long as it had a theatrical release in whatever country it is, then that's fine. And that's one question.
I don't plan on watching some Paris film that there's been 5 of, and
but I was going to ask, would you be up for watching Japanese horror films over, say, American horror film? For instance, you have Ju-on, or otherwise known as, I believe that one is...
I think we can leave that for when we're stretching for ones that we can't think of.
Alright, that's fine.
Maybe, perhaps. I will leave it open. I will, yes. I won't close that idea down.
Okay, good. Because I would argue that the Japanese horror films can be done way better than most American horror films. So, there we go.
But I would have no opinion on whether it's fried or not.
Yeah. Well, that would be the thing. We would get to... see something, and maybe it could also be a way of having people who have become bored by these franchises, and then we say, well, we've never seen them, and they can hear us watch this latest one that you hate, and it's like, well, actually, we didn't mind it. So it'll be interesting. So yes, as I said, do get a hold of us. Do suggest any franchise you feel has gone on too long that isn't still currently being released in cinemas. That's another thing. It has to be something that we can easily just get a hold of and watch, and that...
could we make exceptions for it? Because, if the film's been out for a couple years or something, and say for instance, Paranormal Activity, could we review the most recent one, even though there's more than likely going to be another one out in theaters?
Okay, let's say it has to be on digital or DVD or Blu-ray release. That is the latest one we will get. So if there's one in the cinemas, we won't bother with that. So there has to have been at least 4 theatrically released films that are currently available on DVD slash
on demand, Amazon, whatever. Yeah.
Aren't
you glad folks that were hashing this out on the podcast?
Yes, exactly. This could have been the first 15 minutes of the first episode.
But yes, so we're getting it out of the way.
Yes, so do get a hold of us on that, or get a hold of us for absolutely anything. We will take any and all correspondence whatsoever. So, yes, again, as I said, we're on Twitter, Facebook. We have a website. We're on Instagram. You can email us, blokebusterpodcast@gmail.com. And as I said at the beginning, do rate and review us on iTunes / your podcast catcher of choice.
Yes, please.
Because it helps us get the name out there and all that. So yeah, we very much would appreciate that. And I think all that's left to say is I've been Paul.
I've been Brian.
Bye, guys.
Bye.